The following recordings are part of the Daedalus operation, a top-secret experiment taking place in Redacted, authorized by Redacted. Only authorized members may listen to these files. 0400 hours. We've arrived at the testing site. The others seem pretty upbeat, but I don't share their feelings. This is not my first choice, hardly even my last one if I'm being honest. I was assigned to because I have had issues with authority, knocked to the bottom of the totem pole and given the most grueling of tasks, in the hopes that I will eventually resign or wind up ending myself. This assignment, my former commanding officer told me, was where good men went to die. Now don't be deceived into thinking that you're ready for what's happening here. You aren't, and you never will be. I took those words to heart as I passed through the triple layer of security, and took a moment to calm my heart with a quick smoke. Not the best of habits, I know, but I had also been told that anything outside the quarantine zone wasn't going to be allowed in. All of my personal effects, the memories of my time serving the military, and even the picture of my girlfriend would be left behind. Not too late to tuck your tail and run, Kelly. That was my new boss, a nerfed merc named Roland Matthias. He was either Eastern European or Mediterranean, but he looked like he was the type that meant business and had probably seen twice as many battles as me. He was counting inventory as his soldiers set up a base camp, and his senior communications officer was explaining how we would be able to transmit anything from the other side once we went through. So, this is for real? I asked, recalling the bizarre way the mission had been described when I had been told that I was headed to this godforsaken place. The file was thin, but claimed that the building we were now entering had experienced an incident relating to an experiment only about 5 months ago. Since that time, 4 teams had attempted to discern what had happened, and none had returned successfully. According to the last transmission, there were large fluctuations in radio waves and electromagnetism. It was a wall of noise, a glitch in the very fabric of our reality. The squad had come to call this zone as a liminal gate, as the only footage we had obtained from the other side showed drab corridors that went on forever, fluorescent lights that hardly provided any illumination at all, and a sense of emptiness that filled any who watched the media with a sense of dread. When I first saw the report, I had assumed it was some sort of sick joke or a confusion in the mission statement. But now as we prepared to barge into the abandoned building acting as though it were a battle zone, I realized that this was more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Get your suit on and be ready to move out in 1 hour, Matthias had told me. I took the time to call my girlfriend. She didn't even know about my reassignment and I wasn't entirely sure how to explain it. Thankfully, I got only her voicemail, so I made it quick. Hey, it's me. I'm on the field again just like you wanted. I'm about to head out, but I wanted to make sure you were doing okay. I know we haven't had much of a chance to talk, but I think that I would like to change that. Once this is over, maybe I can just come home. Heck, I wish I could now. I wish I could run into your arms. The message beeped and I cursed to myself, realizing that I didn't have enough time to say all the things that I wanted to say. I've made so many mistakes to wind up here. My superiors likely wanted me to enter this building and never return. I suited up and took a deep breath. It was time to prove them wrong. 0500 hours. I told myself as Matthias finished getting the others ready that I would do my best to familiarize myself with the names of my fellow comrades. We were but a skeleton crew, meant to only investigate as much as possible and report back to HQ. But it was soon very clear that I wasn't the only one here who had been sent to be forgotten. Vincent Carter, the team's physician, said that he had been given the assignment after a botched surgery in Boston. Mr. Lang said that there were 2 sisters that needed my assistance, and I was on holiday near Evergrove anyway. I tried to save them, but honestly, he had called me too late. They didn't like that, and given the fact that I had alcohol in my breath, well, I don't have to tell you what happened next, he said, gesturing aimlessly to the entrance of the abandoned building. I was focusing on the darkness and thinking back to the footage that I had seen, asking aloud to Commander Roland, "Where does the power source come from?" "That is but one of the many questions that we hope to answer," he replied. Weatherby, an analyst that seemed close to Roland, was helping to set up a tethering system. All of us would be interconnected to one another via simple pulleys and ropes, as though we were planning a spelunking expedition. "It's easy to get lost in there. Make sure you don't lose sight of one another," Weatherby had advised me. An older soldier that looked like he should be already past retirement barked to complain as the analyst finished the hooks on the rope and gave me a gruff look. I immediately noticed that he had a long scar running along the left side of his face, along with a glass orb where his eye had once been. "Got something to say, son?" he asked as he put his automatic weapon over his shoulder. "Commander Matthias told us to send out any messages to family or friends in the event that we don't return. I didn't see you doing that," I commented as we walked toward the darkness. "Nobody out here left for me. Only the shadows are my comfort now," he said, spitting on the ground. "I mean, surely there must be someone." He turned and jabbed a finger in my chest, angry that I was still pressing the issue. "I said there was no one, and leave it at that. I belong here," the old man growled. I stood in place for a moment, confused by his words as Vincent explained. "Marsh is the only one that volunteered, I don't know why. There are rumors, of course, but nothing solid. Anyway, we should head inside." I shook off the unease and nodded, activating the light on my helmet, and I followed the others inside. Matthias was nearing the east wall, setting up small rectangular boxes on the edge of the concrete barrier, and then Weatherby was going to each one and checking to make sure that everything was secure. "I suggest you cover your ears for this part," Roland said. I barely had time to listen as the strange resonating noise filled the empty building, and then I noticed as the noise got louder that the wall itself seemed to shimmer the way a body of water would, rippling and vibrating frantically as our commandant gave us the go-ahead. I hesitated, still unsure about any of this, but it wasn't like I had a choice. The others were already barreling toward the wall as if it wasn't there, and the rope would tug me forward anyway. I closed my eyes and ran as well, the shimmering wall looming ahead. I screamed as I thought I would collide with it, and then I did hit it, and all around me, reality seemed to glitch. Walls shifted and jolted in and out of existence, hardly there and as firm as bricks all at once. And then I fell to the ground in front of me. It was shag carpet, the kind that you might see in a hotel hallway. And as I opened my eyes, I saw that there was no need for night vision anymore. The dim, fluorescent lights revealed the long, widening corridors beyond. Immediately, my eyes darted about to find the others as I looked down at the rope. It was stretching forward down the hallway, but I couldn't see much further than perhaps 20 feet, until it fell into complete darkness. Then I swiveled about, expecting to see Carter entering from the real world into the strange beyond from the fake wall. Instead, I saw the exact same endless corridors, and the rope that was tied to my body that connected to him was stretching on in that direction as well for 20 feet until the darkness had covered it up. Suddenly, I felt very unsure which way that I had arrived, or which way I should be going. The walls and ceilings all looked the same bland colors. There were no markings or anything to tell me which direction my companions had gone, so I tried to shout, my voice sounding hollow as it echoed down the hallway. There was no answer. I walked over to the nearest wall and took out a Swiss Army knife from my pocket. I wrote an X on the wall to tell me where I was at, and then I turned to the left and tugged at the rope, calling to Carter and the others again. When silence answered back, I started to pull at the rope and then use it as a guide like Matthias had intended, one step at a time in this strange dimension. 0700. I don't really know for sure how much time had passed since I had arrived, but it certainly feels like at least a few hours because I'm hungry already. I've been following the rope, calling to my fellow soldiers every 100 feet, and wondering if I will be alone forever as I wander these empty, liminal spaces. I tell myself not to give up, but that is very hard when it feels like the odds are against me. I have somehow been going in circles, as I found the X that I marked on the wall at least 22 times, but it doesn't feel like I've turned around. The rope continues to stretch on infinitely. I decided to take a break and eat the first part of my rations, thinking perhaps if I stay out, somebody will find me. I am partially correct, but it is not someone, it is something. Oh, 8:30. I heard something in the distance, a low grumbling noise that made the hair in the back of my neck stand up. I knew that it couldn't be any animal that I was familiar with. It reminded me of an old video cassette recording, warped and beyond understanding, shrieking and scrambled. It was somewhere in front of me. The lights above my head flickered for a moment as the noise got louder, and I stood up, keeping my hand on my rapid-fire weapon and peering down the next endless corridor where the rope stretched to. I saw something in the shadows. It was distorted and scrawny and warped all at the same time. It had at least 5 appendages: a twisted neck, a head that looked larger than its body, a mouth on its abdomen, and claws where its eyes should be at. It moved the way that a scorpion would, its long, messy piercers stabbing in the ground as it crawled, first on the floor and then to the walls and the ceiling. Every time that it made a noise, the entire corridor resonated with a vibrating ring of energy, and it was heading toward me. Immediately, I opened fire on the creature, a string of bullets flying from my weapon toward its open stomach. As it got hit, the fleshy tendrils of the legs and flailing arms widened and shook madly, absorbing each blow as if it were just striking at the air. And it was growing larger too, until the abscess on its head was too bulky to even hold its own weight, and it tumbled into the room alongside me. I panicked and cut the rope, running back the way that I had come to the right and away from the path that I had been following. The halls kept stretching, on and on as I weaved and hid, trying to make a distance between myself and the monster. The screams vibrated and changed from being almost on top of me to being far away as I kept moving left to right and then down the corridors, wondering if I was even getting further away or not. It was difficult to be sure that there was any progress being made. And then I turned a corner and nearly ran straight into one of the others, Vincent. His eyes were wide with fear as he grabbed my shoulders and put his hands over my mouth to prevent any sound from being heard. We both hunkered down next to a wall as we heard the creature scream and thrash somewhere in a different corridor, both of us ready to run if necessary. Once the noises died down, I let out a visible sigh of relief and looked down at the rope. He had almost untethered, meaning the chances of us being able to meet with the others was even less likely now. "Have you seen anyone else?" Carter asked. I shook my head no, and he pointed to the right. "Come on, there's something that you need to see," he said. 10:20. I'm not entirely sure if the measurement of time means much anymore, but I've been trying my best to keep track of our journey here. Carter seemed to know where he was going, following scratches in the wall to the east as he kept his weapon steady and we kept moving. Every so often we would freeze, hide and listen to the strange monster as it shambled past us, but never would get close. It made me wonder if perhaps the creature itself was also lost here, the same as us. Soon I was beginning to wonder if these markings were ever going to lead anywhere when I saw what looked like a door and I nearly laughed in astonishment. Running toward it, I unlatched the handle and found myself staring at what resembled a fire escape of some kind, with stairs that seemed to go on infinitely forever above and below us. Carter reached into his pack and took out a small empty water bottle, tossing it to the stairwell below. We didn't hear it hit the bottom, only seeing it vanish into the bottomless pit. I was about to go explain this passage when that thing started to hunt me. Carter had explained. "How far down do you suppose this goes?" I asked, checking my rations. I had enough for at least 4 more hours, but that didn't count for water supply. We need to find the others soon, I told him. Carter didn't respond, instead, using the weapon on his left shoulder to aim toward the darkness and try and judge how far down we would be going. You think it goes all the way down there? He asked as he fired a random bullet into the air. We watched as it flew up and out of sight, and I shook my head as we climbed down. I'd say that we're already there. 1,200 hours. We stop for a break, and I offer what little water that I have left to share with Carter as we slide down and I stretch my legs. The stairs are endless, just like the corridor that we came from, and I'm beginning to get the feeling that we may never leave. It makes my throat feel dry and my legs are numb to the reality that I'll likely die here just as it was intended. Marsh would know what to do. Did I ever tell you why he volunteered? He whispered. To fight the good fight, I guessed. Carter laughed and tossed his empty food can into the pit. He claimed that he was searching for something, like he had been here before. It didn't make sense, but he definitely seemed to know what he was doing. Wish he had been the commanding officer instead of Matthias. There must be some rhyme and reason to this labyrinth. I was about to reply when I heard something and I looked up above. It sounded like a scream. What is it? Carter asked. A second later, a body fell right past me and I fumbled back against the wall. A moment later, we heard a loud thud. Getting to our feet, we ran down about 5 more floors of stairs to see that the analyst that had been hired to keep us alive was now the first victim of the maze. I looked above us into the infinite stairwell. Do you think it was that thing, and it's following us? I asked. I don't know, but look. Carter said as he pointed his weapon toward the corridor to the left. This one was narrow and cramped, leading to a second door which had marked on it a word that looked like it was Latin or something. Theseus, Vincent whispered as he opened the door, and we stepped into what looked like a control room of some kind. There were monitors everywhere, at least 100 of them, perhaps more. Viewing all of the different corridors and corners and floors of this interdimensional maze, and near the center, I saw another impossible monstrosity. This one had to be at least 20 feet tall, judging from the angle of the camera, and it was chained down on all sides, so it was difficult to be sure how large it was at its full height. It looked like a mad science experiment gone wrong, with the flesh twisted and peeled back all over its body. A mesh between a beast of the field and a man's lower torso. Its head was shaped like that of a bull with 2 bony cracked horns curving towards the lighting fixtures, as its cold, dead hazel eyes peered toward the camera. It was looking toward us as if aware of its captivity, thinking of its escape. This is why this place was built, Vincent commented, his voice hardly a whisper as we checked the other cameras. There were more creatures that I couldn't describe properly on other floors, roaming freely and hunting for food, or perhaps just hunting to kill. It occurred to me in these endless corridors it was likely that nothing would be available for resources, so the only thing keeping these beasts going was sheer rage. And perhaps a means of energy, like the lights, I thought as I looked away from the monitors. I thought that Commander Roland told us this place was from another reality, a step into an alien world. Why does all this look like we're the ones that made it? I asked, gesturing randomly toward the equipment. Because this is a containment facility, a voice said from the right side of the control room. It was the old man Marsh. He was coming in, dragging the body of Weatherby alongside him. As I've tried to explain to the others so many times, these are wild, genetic creations that have no idea what they are or where they belong in the circle of life. This constant agony of nothingness that confines them here will only feed their anger and make them harder to control, he said as he shut down the systems one by one. I don't understand why our organization is doing this, I said. Marsh laughed. Yes, you do. Weaponizing these dimensional creatures and modifying them to be our slaves would change the face of war forever. When they created this liminal space, it was meant for only one monster, that horrid minotaur you saw chained in the core. But the experiments have spread like cancer and it's gotten out of control. They'll never admit it, but these things can't be contained here forever. The maze is going to eventually implode. I have seen what it can do firsthand. He passed me a picture of a younger woman who I guessed was his daughter, and I complimented him saying, "I take it that she was brought here and that's why you come." They've turned this prison into a sacrificial pit. It's the only way to keep the creatures satisfied. They wander and moan and consume everything in the maze. And people like us, people cast aside like her. We are the bait. We are consumed by their greed. And then, as a result, the maze grows. My hands began to tremble as I passed the picture back to him, realizing what he was implying. I was told before I came here that I was sent here to die. I thought that was only a wild exaggeration, but it really was a mission statement. They can't let these things loose in the real world, I whispered. And they can't kill them. Maintaining the maze and discovering what we can about them is the safest choice, but it comes with a cost. Feeding these bees takes a lot of lives. More and more are losing theirs for what is ultimately a forgotten cause, I realized. And it will never be enough, Vincent decided. Listen to yourself. We can't just go home either. We don't even know how. We need to find a way to kill these things. Marsh, you said the prison could collapse. Can we do that and eliminate the threats inside? I asked the old man. He rubbed his beard thoughtfully as we marched out of the control room, and he nodded, saying, "It'll take a little bit of time to get in position. There's a way, I've been there before, but I won't be doing anything until I find my daughter." I nodded, checking what little equipment we had left. "Then we should move together from now on," I said. 1,600 hours. I don't think I should log the time anymore as it's become a constant threat to my sanity. I know we have been longer than I am recording, yet the markers from my journal keep me tethered to what I once understood as reality. The endless blank hallways have stretched out on and on, as Vincent and Marsh and I keep searching for the last survivor of our group, our commanding officer, along with the daughter that he lost that I doubt is even alive. I say that because of the creatures that we have seen here in this place, and Marsh has become more and more lost as time goes on. His earlier ramblings about knowing a way to stop these monsters seems like a faint memory now as I pull Carter to the side and mutter, "How long are we going to let this old man keep us wandering? We have no idea what part of this dimensional prison we're in." Carter's eyes were bloodshot and his lips were dry, another reminder that we were out of time. We had no resources left and our energy was scarce at best. "Maybe we can find a way back to that command center. Find an exit," he asked, coming to terms with the fact that our search for Roland seemed useless. Before I could speak, I heard Marsh holler for us. It was a cry of distress. Despite our misgivings about the man, we dashed to where he was at in another large empty chamber, and as soon as I saw what had made him scream, I felt numb. Roland, or what was left of him, was on display in the center of the room. His body spliced apart every which way you could imagine. It was held together by what looked like long black chains. Suddenly, I realized where we were. This was the center of the maze where earlier we had seen the strange bull-like beast, the Minotaur as Marsh had called it. But his story was now falling apart. He had claimed this was another mad experiment that had failed, and that was what we had seen. Yet now we were viewing it for ourselves and all I saw was a broken man. And yet his organs still seemed to have life in them, as a strange energy pulsed amid the chains. We are the experiment, fed into the machine to face these beasts and then eventually become them, I realized. I heard shrieks coming from the nearby corridors and realized that the beast that we had been chased by earlier were likely coming here soon to harvest what was left of Roland. Marsh fell to his knees, defeated and frustrated, as he screamed and punched the soaked floor. I knew that he was thinking of the daughter he had sacrificed everything for. And then I turned to Vincent, who was cocking his gun and aiming it at his own mouth, tears streaming down his face. "This isn't how I want it to end. I'd rather be dead than used for this freak show," he whispered. I screamed for him to stop, but it was too late. The echoes of the bullet smashing through his head alerted the creatures to my location, and I tugged at Marsh, urging him to stand. "Go on without me. My children want me here," he insisted as he pushed me away. I didn't have time to argue, as the different shambling beasts were already in the core. So I ran to the left and I didn't look back. Time unknown. How long has it been since then, and I've somehow survived? Perhaps it's been a few days or a few months. I wait for others to arrive as I wander this place, forced to feed off the men that are left behind and use their carcasses as shelter and security. The creatures are beginning to treat me as part of the maze, and giving me my own territory, a back room of sorts that I can wander and scribble on the walls whatever I wish. This is where I have begun to write warnings in my own experience of my time here, using the long fingernails and rudimentary bones that I've left for my grotesque meals, to which I can remind myself of how I once was human too. I think I walk like a man, but I can no longer claim to understand the world beyond the maze. Here, thanks to the endless cycle of time, I can become a god. This is likely what the experiment was meant for anyway. And although the creatures I have seen are bizarre, I have also seen how beautiful they can be. How can something so amazing and full of life be a nightmare? I returned to the command center and saw Marsh on the cameras not long ago, wandering a different part of the maze. His skin is all but gone now and he walks like a shadow with a limp. He continues to search for something that is long gone, or perhaps it may not even be here. Or, as I've begun to lose track of time, I've understood that there is no rhyme or reason to the flow of events here. We are simply here. The present is always and the past is always, and the future is always. I found the place where Marsh claimed this place could be open to the rest of the world. I walk by it often to see who's there. Sometimes I think of escape, but I doubt the world would recognize me for what I am now. The other day, I saw a woman, a girl. She seems familiar, a distant memory from the life I could have had. I killed her instantly and used her bone marrow to restore my own energy. Her eyes were dead and accusing, but I think she would agree it was better for her to end it here on the threshold than become a part of the labyrinth. I think she might have been connected to me, or perhaps to the old man. He is part of the maze now, his body meshing with the wall and being absorbed. The same will happen to me. I do not know if I'll return to the world beyond, although the way is open to me. I do not think anything is there for me waiting. I do not think I belong there, as I have lost my own sanity. I will wander these corridors stripped of any memory of what was once human, and be the maze itself. Eventually, I will die and my body absorbed and the cycle repeat. Until one day, our world meets with the one beyond these walls. End recording. File under Daedalus Test Subject Number 13. Mission considered a success minus the casualty of one Lucia Marsh. Continue process of creating new mutations. Begin plans for next mission by end of month. Mission statement: to expand perimeters of dimensional gateways to explore further details of the new dimension and determine the flow of time within.